Hi, my name's Dave Killick, and I've taught here at the University of Arizona for 25 years. Bill Longacre was head of department when I was hired, and I wanted to tell a little anecdote about my hiring, which reflects on the kind of person that Bill was. At the time I was hired, I had another job offer from Michigan Tech University in Houghton, Michigan, which was Bill's hometown. And we talked about that, but I decided to come here. Anyway, something went wrong with my hiring, and I got a very brief phone call from the head of the committee, who I won't name, to say that the job was off and I should take the job in Houghton. And he wouldn't say why, and I was mystified. And I called Mike Schiffer, who was also on the committee, and Mike said he hadn't heard anything. And would I please stay by the phone, and he'd figure out what was happening. So a little while later, Mike Schiffer calls me back and he says, the head of the committee forgot to file papers with the Affirmative Action Office, and the Affirmative Action Office canceled the job. And I said, that's terrible, what do I do now? And Mike Schiffer said, stay by the phone and I'll call Bill Longacre. Bill Longacre had left. It was after the end of the semester, but Mike managed to track him down at Michael Graves' house in Hawaii, and Bill called the affirmative action from Hawaii. And years later, it was reported to me that what he said to the affirmative action was, come on, I want a favor from you. He said, I know we messed up in this particular case. He said, but we made 4 hires this year. He said, 3 of them were women, 1 was minority. Can't we just have 1 white male? And the affirmative action person on the other end laughed, and she said, just because it's you, Uncle Willy, okay. So that was how I came to end up at the University of Arizona. And that was the kind of person Bill was. Bill had such a reservoir of goodwill around the university that he could talk people into doing things. He could get them to bend the rules. He was so widely respected and so much loved that he could get anything done. And that's my story.
I am Dr. John Meaney, an anthropologist, biological anthropologist, and Bill was one of my teachers of archaeology. In fact, he was pretty much my only teacher of archaeology when I was a graduate student in the mid-60s, and I really count him among the people that prepared me well for the comprehensive exam. Most of my archaeology training with him, I was well prepared because I passed it on the first try. I have a lot of wonderful memories of him. One of the things he used to do with me all the time, he never referred to me as John, and it was always Dr. Meaney. And I think he was probably thinking to himself that he was glad that I wasn't his dentist, having a name like Dr. Meaney. But one thing that I remember about Bill very fondly is his very dry sense of humor. And I remember in my second year of graduate work, the fall of 1966, I was taking a course in Old World archaeology with Bill. And in the very first class, as they did in those days, and he was only in his 3rd year of teaching at that time, so he was going by all the rules and regulations of the university. And so he read out the list of people that were taking the course. And when he got to a certain name, he read out her name, and someone in the back of the class said, she eloped. And he looked up and he said, what? And he said again, she eloped. And then Bill just sort of puzzled and looked down and studied the sheet, looked back at the audience, the students, looked down and again, and then just simply said, but there's no code for that. And that's one of my favorite memories of him, trying to figure out what to do about how to code the fact that somebody had eloped and hadn't returned for their 2nd year of graduate work. So, thank you. That's it.
Hi, my name's Victoria Phaneuf. I'm a PhD graduate from the University of Arizona. I say PhD student because that's what I was when I knew Bill. I didn't know Bill as well as most people who are probably viewing the tapes, but he was one of the first people I met when I came here to interview and decide if I wanted to attend. And I was very impressed by how interested and curious he was about my research, even though I'm a cultural anthropologist, not an archaeologist, and I work in France, so nothing that he was professionally interested in, but that he asked really good questions, and he made me feel welcome, and that this was a place that if everyone was so curious about things that they had no immediate professional interest in, this would be a place that I could make my home. I was also a repeated visitor at his Thanksgiving parties and his birthday parties. So I was one of his orphans that he would feed incredible amounts of food and then be very patient with when I lay on the floor because I'd eaten too much to even sit up in a chair and look at the football game upside down because I was lying on the floor and ask him all kinds of questions like, why are they throwing the ball? Why aren't they running in the other direction? And what's that weird yellow line that keeps moving around? So he taught me absolutely everything I knew about football and was always an amazingly gracious and friendly host. Again, even as somebody that he had no professional overlap with at all. And I just really appreciated it and miss him a lot. Thank you.
My name is Dave Doyle. I'm a graduate of the University of Arizona and a graduate of Grasshopper Field School. If it wasn't for Bill Longacre, I would have not spent my entire adult life in the state of Arizona. He recruited both myself and my wife, whom I met at Grasshopper, Sharon Dubowski, at Grasshopper. We subsequently moved to Tucson, and my story's a little different with Bill in that I became interested in the archaeology of the desert and Hohokam, and so I picked Emil Howry as a committee chair and different committee. But I still remember Bill very fondly. I would see him at meetings, and he was always very gracious and very generous, as people here have said. And I think that's really it. We have very fond memories of Bill.
Hi, my name is Tony Luberman. I was a student in 1969 at the University of Arizona, coming from Columbia University in New York. My wife and I drove out, never been that far west, and I met Bill very early on. We hit it off, as well as my wife, and he invited me to go to the Archaeological Field School in 1970, the season of 1970, and found out my wife was a photographer and immediately hired her as a photographer. So I was a student for 1 year, and I was on the staff for 2, and Susan was a photographer for 3 years. And she and Bill had a real special arrangement. They got along very well, and she enjoyed him very, very much. So after that, I did not pass my comprehensive, not like Mike Schiffer, but I did not retake them. And I went on for a career at the city of Tucson for a number of years. So it's 27 years, and retired. And then in 2010, I got my MFA at Vermont College of Fine Arts in poetry. And I've long thought Grasshopper stayed with us. The experience of Grasshopper in the early days in the anthropology department stayed with me a long, long time. And I wrote a poem about Grasshopper that I'd like to read, dedicated to Bill Longacre. Elegy from an Archaeological Field School, Grasshopper Pueblo, circa 1300 AD, Sibique, Arizona, in memory of Bill Longacre. They lived hard, high on the Mogollon Rim among dark pines. They painted pottery in polychromes of red and white, finely shaped, and planted corn in spring soil cool after rain. Shells from salt seas adorn their arms, and from the tropics, bright-feathered parrots perched in their homes. Too often, mothers young with newborns, buried on their chests, their rib bones woven with the babies. a bone basket of mother and child gathered together, cloistered in bone song. Too often, too, children under 10, buried in graves empty of offerings, empty of comfort for one last journey, empty of the Pueblo's grieving. For death, close to birth, was further from love. 2 large potsherds used to scrape a fetus from the dirt floor, uncovered in a garbage pit, and between their shards, tiny notes of their song, like those from a small bird.
My name is Ellen Stamp, and I worked in the School of Anthropology. I was hired by Bill Longacre in 1992, and he was a great person to work with. He was always fun to be with, had the wonderful puns, and very kind and generous to all the staff. And the thing I remember most about Bill was how kind he was to all his students and how he looked after them. If there was something that he needed or that they needed, he would come and see us, the particular staff member that could help the student, and he would make sure that the things got done for them. And I thought a man that was as busy as he was to take the time to do these little things for students was really an exceptional thing to do and a very admirable thing to do. And the other thing I remember is that, especially his Filipino students would call him Tito Bill. And I thought that was just an expression for, from the Philippines that he was uncle. But I saw in the relationship between him and his students how much they were part of his family and how he was truly an uncle to them and a mentor, and he was just an exceptional man, and I am really proud to have known him. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Norma Maynard, and I met Bill Longacre the first time when he interviewed me for a position there in the Department of Anthropology as a business manager. I was quite surprised that he eventually offered me the position, because I came from another place on campus where my boss had been rather abusive and very difficult to work with. And I had been there for a time long enough to feel like I had nothing to offer, that I wasn't able to be a good employee or have any good ideas or have anything to offer anyone as an employee or a person. So I was quite demoralized as an individual. But Bill offered me a position anyway, and I was quite surprised. And through his kindness, but mostly the fact that he believed in me, made me a person that I could do something good. I could be a good employee. I could have a good idea. And if I accomplished anything in anthropology, it was because Bill Longacre believed in me.
I'm Brian Silverstein. I'm a cultural anthropologist on the faculty here in anthropology. And I first experienced Bill Longacre's generosity before I even met him, and before he met me. I had just been hired, but had not yet actually arrived in Tucson, and was trying to figure out where I was going to send what, and I thought it would be great if I could ship my books to my office in the Department of Anthropology, then department. And so I probably contacted John Olson, who was the head at the time, and he said, of course, no problem, just send them on. Well, I did that, and of course, little did I know that at that time over the summer, not only was there no such thing as my office, but there wasn't when I arrived here either. So John sort of sheepishly, I imagine at some point, told me that there was a serious space problem in the department, and so I was going to have to share an office, et cetera, et cetera. So my first thought was, oh, fine, but what happened to my books? And it turned out they had been stored in Bill Longacre's office. He was generous with his space as well as his time and his resources. And he allowed my books to be stacked up in his quite spacious, as it turns out, office. And so I was always grateful. And when I started to bump into him every now and then, I initially, being an assistant professor, not even an archaeologist at that, I imagined that in his eyes I was probably just a step above a grad student. So I was referring to him as Professor Longacre the first couple of times that I met him. And he very quickly said, no, call me Bill. So after that, I went to a couple of the Beethoven parties as well, and indeed was always really impressed by Bill's generosity.